This is Jim ENGSTER, your moderator, and Governor John Bel Edwards is here for his 37th Ask the Governor show. The 56th governor is ready to take your questions. Again, your number is 877-217-5757. He has a special guest with him, Dr. Kim Hunter-Reid, Commissioner of Higher Education, and we'll talk about that. Is certainly a topic of interest in our state. Higher education is something that we hold near and dear, and for many years we saw it on the chopping block. But Governor Edwards, before we go there, a few items. A development today regarding the Comate River Basin. What's going on there?
Well, I am excited to tell you we actually had a groundbreaking this morning. All of the funding for the entire project is on hand. The Corps of Engineers will be letting the first contracts in May, and this total investment is around $400 million. $353 million of that is new, but this project is decades old. It's more than 30 years old. A lot of people had totally given up on it, but the floods of March and August of 2016 inspired us to really work hard with the congressional delegation, with Colonel Clancy, who commands the New Orleans District of the Corps of Engineers, but also working with the White House and Mick Mulvaney when he was director of OMB. I had meetings with him and with General Simonite. Lieutenant General Simonite he heads up the Corps of Engineers for the whole country, and he actually entertained me at his office in D.C., and then I reciprocated. He came down to Louisiana. We met at the governor's mansion, and then he flew over the project area. But the project should be complete by the summer of 2021. And that's exciting because it's going to mitigate against future floods, and you know that area is certainly one that's been dealing with these floods too often and for too long. And this project's been on the books, and so now we're gonna get it done.
Well, another development that is all over the news that apparently is forthcoming is the departure of Joe Oliva as athletic director at Louisiana State University. I suspect you know more than you can say, but what do you think?
Well, I'm not going to make news here today. Joe Oliva's been at LSU, I think, for more than a dozen years, and you know he's put in an awful lot of service on behalf of the university athletic program. We've won an awful lot of competitions where there were gymnastics, baseball, football, basketball, and so forth. And certainly I'm not going to get ahead of him because as of the time we went on the air, I don't think there had been an announcement from him. But the people in Baton Rouge and around Louisiana, really around the country, I suspect will find out about the same time that I do about whatever change is going to happen there at LSU at the athletic department.
And the Advocate, the newspaper of record in Louisiana, now that the Picayune's a 3-day-a-week endeavor. The Advocate, in its 177-year history, has won Pulitzer Prize, and it came this week on an issue that you, of course, were involved in.
Yeah, and the issue is huge for our state. Last fall, the state, by a considerable margin, adopted a constitutional amendment to make sure that criminal convictions in Louisiana require a unanimous jury, something that hasn't been the case for the last 130 years. And the pedigree of that in Louisiana was an explicit effort to maintain white supremacy in Louisiana that emanated out of the 1890 Constitutional Convention in New Orleans. So I'm really happy that the state did what it did with respect to the constitutional amendment. And I'm happy that the Advocate won a Pulitzer. I mean, that is very noteworthy. That is a significant accomplishment. But I look at that as lagniappe. It was a great award to a really good, solid newspaper. But the coverage was about something that's even more important to the state of Louisiana, and that was the underlying issue, and that is the unanimous jury for criminal convictions.
Well, Danny Heitman and Lanny Keller were finalists for the editorial aspect of that story as well, which is a tremendous honor. But sometimes the Advocate praises you. Sometimes on its editorial pages it criticizes you. When you get one you don't like, does it stick with you for a few hours?
No. Look, if I don't expect anybody or any paper to agree with me 100% of the time. But at the end of the day, I think that the Advocate has been more or less fair. And you know, I'm happy that the paper won. I'm also happy that the paper seems, and I don't know any of the internal financials for the paper, but unlike a lot of papers around the country, it seems to be doing well and growing in circulation and so forth. And so I think that's a positive thing for our state, because that is not the case for many newspapers around the country.
Well, your guest today is a person who was the press secretary for a governor when there were a lot more newspapers and a lot more coverage. Those days have changed, but still, we, of course, rely upon the media, at least I hope so, to give us information of vital importance. And your guest, Kim Hunter-Reid, has gone on to other things, and it involves a post of significance in state government.
Yeah, well, first of all, she's regarded around the country as a real expert on higher education. And so we're very happy, or I'm very happy, and I think we're very lucky to have her back in Louisiana. Most recently, before this job, she was in Colorado, basically as their equivalent to the Commissioner of Higher Education here, and was doing a great job. And before that, she had worked in the Obama administration overseeing HBCU initiatives. And with the only HBCU system in the country in Louisiana, the Southern system, and having also Grambling and then on the private side, Dillard and Xavier, I just think that her skill set, her experience really set her up for this job in Louisiana. And one of the things she's been working with me on, and that I hope you will give her an opportunity to talk about, is the importance of dual enrollment in Louisiana, and making sure that juniors and seniors across the state of Louisiana, regardless of where they go to school and their ability to pay, that they actually have opportunities to take dual enrollment classes, because I think that will ensure that more people transition from high school to higher education. They will be more successful when they make the transition, and they can actually graduate sooner, saving themselves, their parents, and the state money, and hurrying that time to the time when they can actually start earning a really good paycheck and have a rewarding career. So the dual enrollment initiative by Senator Marsh is what I'm hoping we'll discuss when we come back.
We will come back. This is Jim ENGSTER. You're listening to Ask the Governor, and Governor John Bel Edwards is here, along with the Commissioner of Higher Education, Kim Hunter-Reid, who, of course, is a Louisiana native from Lake Charles and was educated in this state, 2 degrees from LSU and 1 from Southern University, and she is the person in charge of what's going on in higher education. And when we went to the break, the governor was talking about dual enrollment. I know this is something that you believe is essential. Kim Hunter-Reid.
Thank you so much, Jim, and certainly Governor appreciates the opportunity to talk about this issue. Yes, we absolutely want to make sure that we are providing a framework where we have equity and parity around the state in terms of dual enrollment. As you know, it's an opportunity for us to get more college to kids in our state, recognizing that the high school diploma is now the floor, not the ceiling. It's not enough to get you a living wage or into your first job. And so dual enrollment has traditionally been a place for high flyers, really super smart students who are on a mission. They're blowing through their learning in high school and they need more. What we want to do is to make sure that every student in high school has a clear message that you have to go beyond high school, and that we're giving you an early start to get that done, whether it's a career technical education course in welding or electrician, engineering technology, or it's a math or English academic course. We want to send a clear message to every student. You've got to start. We want a process that allows you to start early, and I appreciate the governor for talking about the importance of understanding no matter your race or place, we want to make sure there's an opportunity for you.
The governor mentioned you came back to Louisiana from Colorado. That's one of those states that ranks high on all of those quality of life measurements. They're like 1, 2, 3, 4, or 5, and we're usually near the bottom of those, unfortunately, those categories. What brought you back?
Well, you know, this is a place that I love, and it's work that I love to do. And certainly my daughter's senior year of high school helped in terms of bringing me back here. But you're right, Colorado is a state that has very high higher educational attainment. Louisiana has traditionally had one of the lowest, but both states have a challenge of trying to make sure that their homegrown talent is improving. Both states have significant equity gaps that have to be addressed, and so some of the work is very similar, and our approach and our passion for the work certainly is the same. I really want to make sure that, like I was able to do in Colorado, I have an opportunity to really advance good policy and work in a broad tent, whether it's business and industry, elected officials like our governor, K-12, faith communities, all of these individuals have to come together to make sure that we're increasing educational attainment in Louisiana.
You know, there's another connection to Colorado around higher education too. 2 weeks ago, we went to Monroe and announced that CenturyLink, the state's largest corporate headquarters, would remain in Monroe through 2025. And CenturyLink was actually the smaller of two companies that merged. Level 3 is actually based in Boulder, Colorado. And the question was whether the headquarters would stay in Louisiana or move to Boulder. Well, we won out over that. And we did that when the folks at CenturyLink, and especially the CEO, concluded that we have the talent here in Louisiana and we're committed to higher ed so that they will have a pipeline of that talent with the requisite knowledge and skills and degrees to be successful in Louisiana. And so they stayed through 2025, and it's just that renewed commitment that we have to higher education in Louisiana that made that possible, and a number of our other economic development wins around the state.
Again, your number is 877-217-5757. If you receive a busy signal, be patient. You should be able to get in as we move along with Governor John Bell Edwards and Dr. Kim Hunter Reid. James in Longview, Texas. Hello, James.
Well, hi there, Jim, and good afternoon, Governor Edwards.
Hi, James. Good to hear from you.
Thank you very much. Anyhow, I was reading in the news about the Louisiana governor election coming up and other statewide elections, and how a law places a 3-month blackout on the incumbent from fundraising. And my question is just purely your personal observation. I mean, do you think that law is fair? It almost seems to me that it hamstrings one candidate while other candidates have free reign. I'd just like to know your thoughts and opinions on it.
Thank you, James. You are a well-informed Texan when it comes to Louisiana current affairs. But no, you're right, and I do think it's fair. And the reason is, I don't think at the end of the day, substantively, it makes much difference. But I think the appearance of it is important, so that while we're in a regular legislative session, I am not out there raising money, and for 30 days after, because I guess that was done to make sure that I'm not raising money while I can decide whether to veto a bill or not. Because although there may be absolutely no relationship between a contribution on the one hand and whether I sign or veto a bill or whatever, I think that if we don't do it for that 90-day period, then the appearance is certainly something that is important. And so, I knew about the ban. Do I think it's fair? I'll leave that to others to decide. But we were able to raise a significant amount of revenue before the ban took effect. And of course, I will resume my fundraising sometime in the first week in July when the ban is over. And I expect to have the resources that I need to wage a very vigorous campaign and quite frankly, a successful campaign.
It's been a little easier to raise money this time than last, hasn't it?
You think? I think, I announced on your show, I didn't intend to, that I was running for governor. And between then and the primary, it was all I could do. And I don't know what I raised, but it was about 1.8 or something like that $1 million as best I can recall. In the 28 days of the runoff, we raised about $9 million in that next cycle. So, yeah, it does. When you have success, it's that old saying, success begets success, right?
Mm-hmm.
There you go. Let's go to New Orleans. Joey in New Orleans, you're on Ask the Governor. Hi, Joey.
Hi there, Governor. Thank you for taking my call. I want to offer you my condolences, first of all, for having to deal with those troglodytes in Baton Rouge who are trying to keep our state's secondary and primary educational system the worst in the country. But that's not why I'm calling. I'm calling, sir, because, as you know, the new terminal, much anticipated at Louis Armstrong Airport, is about to be finished, and it's 21st century all the way except the transportation system. And there isn't any. And so I'm curious as to whether there's any kind of a plan to, call Elon Musk, you're a good pal, and ask him to build a hyperlink from Baton Rouge all the way to New Orleans, or maybe from Houston all the way to Orlando. What do you think?
Joey, thank you very much for the call. And I'm excited, as most people are, that we have a new $1 billion terminal coming online at the New Orleans Airport in Kenner. Unfortunately, the opening of that slipped. It was originally February, then May, and I think now it's August. But I will tell you, when I became governor, even though that project was well underway, there was not an environmental clearance for the connection to I-10 there in Kenner for the flyover, the interchange, and there was absolutely $0 in the state budget to get it done. We have made sure that we're availing ourselves of a Garvey funding opportunity, so we're going to bond out 10% of our federal transportation trust funds for 12 years, create the revenue necessary to move forward with that project, and so we will actually have a very modern, efficient flyover directly from I-10 into the airport. It won't be there by August, unfortunately, but in the interim, we do have an interim solution on surface streets that'll flow through Kenner, and that will actually be in place in May. So we don't. I'm not calling Elon Musk for help, but we are doing what we can do in Louisiana to advance our transportation infrastructure and make sure we're connecting to these other modes of transportation, such as airports.
Thank you, Joey. Michael in Baton Rouge. Hi, Michael. You're on with Governor John Bel Edwards. Michael, you have the floor.
Hello.
Yes, sir.
Hi, Michael.
Governor, I want to ask you about the way in which Mr. Foyle and I think Mr. Carter are reacting to the law that allows the parishes to dictate how and the amount of exemption industry will get. And these two gentlemen seem to be switching houses now as a result of term limits.
All right.
Yeah, well, Michael, thank you for the call. So I think you're talking about the changes that were made to the industrial tax exemption program to ITEP that I made because, quite frankly, the state of Louisiana had that program on autopilot for decades, and it was 100% exemption for 10 years. It was not tied to job creation, and even though all of the money being exempted would otherwise flow to local government did not have a role to play. And I found out that at Louisiana Economic Development, they actually had a study that they did before I became governor that showed that an 80% exemption would be as competitive as we needed to be to land the projects that we were landing, and that gets 20% of the value of the immovable onto the tax rolls, and that supports local government, whether it's our schools or law enforcement, or transportation infrastructure, you name it. But I also thought it was important to have these exemptions because they're very, very generous. And in fact, at 80%, ours is still one of the most generous in the country, tied to jobs. Jobs created foremost, but a very compelling case for jobs retained. I think we're actually in a better place. We're trying to look at the process to see if we can make that process work better. But the three things that I insisted on, I'm going to continue to insist on, and we're going to be very competitive. We're going to land these projects, our fair share of them. The locals will have a seat at the table. It will not be more generous than 80% unless it is a mega project, and that's another discussion. And we're going to tie it to jobs. So those are the three non-negotiable changes for me.
Adrian in River Ridge, you're on the air with Governor Edwards. Hi, Adrian.
Hey, how you doing? Good talking to you, Governor. My subject is climate change. Besides the flood protection plan that's being implemented right now, what are your views on climate change, and what are we going to do as a state, considering that we are reliant on fossil fuels?
Well, Adrian, thank you very much for the call. I believe climate change is real, and I don't think there's any doubt about that there is some question about the degree to which human conduct is influencing that climate change. I happen to accept that human conduct is at least a part of it. And what we're doing in Louisiana is we're making sure we're focusing our efforts along the coast, where 2.5 million Louisianans live and work. We have the most robust protection and coastal restoration and protection plan in the country. In fact, one of the most in the world. And we envision investing $50 billion, and this is to combat subsidence, erosion, and sea level rise. So we have the perfect trifecta hitting us, and we're going to move forward in Louisiana to do that. One of the things that we're doing, quite frankly, is because we are a natural gas state. Natural gas, it burns much more cleanly than does coal, for example. Around the world, we see that countries are moving away from coal power electricity generation towards natural gas. This is good for the environment, and it's good for the state, and we're going to continue to push our advantages. We have one of the highest densities of pipelines in the country. That's why natural gas is priced at the Henry Hub in Erath, Louisiana. We have the Mississippi River and the ports, and that's why we're leading the country in LNG plants. And so that's one of the things that we're going to do that's going to be good for Louisiana and I think good for the planet.
Since we last visited with the governor a month ago, there were 3 church fires in St. Landry Parish, and there has been an arrest. Governor, you have been on the front lines of what's going on there. Certainly a terrible tragedy in our state.
Well, it was, and the good news is the individual, at least that law enforcement, including the fire marshal's office, believe perpetrated the 3 fires, has been apprehended. He's in custody, and so he's off the street. But I've spent a lot of time with the pastors involved, and was actually at a church service with them Sunday afternoon. I was very inspired by how positive they were overall about this entire situation. Obviously, it's very tragic for these 3 congregations, that these churches that their families have been attending for generations are gone and going to have to be rebuilt. But they were very, very positive, and obviously were thankful for the help that they're getting. And they also prayed for the young man who burned their churches, and that he would somehow have his heart changed in all of this. And by the way, one of the newest developments is there are state hate crime charges pending now against this young man, and the federal government continues to look into it. And I can't make any announcements about what they will do or not do or when, but it remains under investigation, and I think there are more charges that may be filed.
Dusty, let's go to Alan in Baton Rouge first. Dusty, you're on deck. Alan, good afternoon. You're on Ask the Governor.
Hi, Governor. I read in the paper that your chief of staff had to resign because of sexual harassment, and then taxpayers were on the hook to pay the victim, and then the victim had to sign a non-disparagement agreement.
Yeah, I don't think you're accurate on that. Not my chief of staff. There was a deputy chief of staff from earlier in the administration. He did, in fact, resign after allegations of sexual harassment. I don't believe that any non-disclosure agreement was part of the deal, however.
The woman has been interviewed several times, so...
Yeah, I mean, so I don't think that the non-disclosure had any role to play in that, and obviously it's unfortunate. It was regrettable. But within about 12 hours of this coming to my attention, the individual in question had been terminated from his position in the administration, and we have moved forward.
Dusty in Baton Rouge. Hi, Dusty. You're on Ask the Governor.
Yes, sir. Thank you for taking my call. I'm sorry I did not start listening to the show earlier. I don't know if this has been discussed already. I just wanted to find out the status of the duplication of SBA loan. About 2 weeks ago, Senator Cassidy, they had indicated that it was going to be resolved in 2 weeks.
Dusty, thank you very much for the call. So we had originally been told that at some point in the March timeframe, we would have gotten an answer on the duplication of benefits. Then there was a government shutdown, and they pushed the answer into May. But it looks like it literally could be any day now that the Housing and Urban Development in Washington will give us their guidance on the duplication of benefits issued in light of the legislation that most recently passed Congress and it was signed by the president. We don't yet know whether all of the individuals who are having a duplication of benefits problem with the Restore program will be aided or not. But as soon as that guidance is issued, we will take whatever steps we are able to take to extend immediate relief to those who are eligible for it. And that literally could happen any day now, but we certainly expect it over the next 2 to 3 weeks.
Charles in Mandeville. Charles, you're on the air with Governor John Bel Edwards.
Hey, Governor, I really appreciate you making yourself so accessible. Number one, for me as a citizen, I really appreciate the direct line.
Thank you,
My
Charles.
question for you is that in the states that have raised the minimum wage substantially more than you have proposed, there's been no net job loss. The polls show that the citizens of the state want to take it to a vote or are in favor of it. Why do you think the Republicans in the Louisiana legislature, number one, are adamantly against the citizens of our state earning a living wage, and why do you think they oppose letting the citizens vote on the issue?
You know, Charles, I think those are great questions. 81% of Louisiana residents, for example, support a minimum wage of $8.50 an hour, according to a very recent poll conducted by LSU's Public Policy Research Lab. And I don't know, because the experience, for example, with our neighbor to the north, Arkansas, I think that they've raised the minimum wage 3 times now, and at no time have they suffered a loss of jobs, even the minimum wage jobs. And it would just seem like it's the right thing to do. I know that the business lobby typically puts a full court press to try to convince legislators not to do it. I think it's a shame, because the minimum wage is $7.25. It's been $7.25 since 2009. The cost of consumer products has gone up 17% since then. And Congress has told us they're out of the business. We're one of just a handful of states left who don't have their own minimum wage. And I think there's a total of 5 without a minimum wage. And as of this year, there will be 20 states increasing the minimum wage this year alone. So it's something that I think we need to do. We need to address it. And I think a modest but meaningful increase is the way to go. And since the legislature hasn't acted on its own to raise the minimum wage, I'm just asking them to give the people of Louisiana an opportunity to vote on it.
Paula in Lafayette. Hello, Paula. You're on the air with Governor Edwards.
Thank you. Hello, Governor. Nice of you to take my call.
Thank you, Paula.
Yes, sir. In your State of the State speech, if I recall, you had mentioned the ERA to have it ratified in our state. What are our chances that the ERA will pass, and what, as citizens, can we do to encourage the state legislature to pass it?
Well, obviously, Paula, if that's something that is important to you, I would encourage you to contact at a bare minimum, your member of the House in Baton Rouge and your member of the Senate. It is not accurate, however, that I covered the Equal Rights Amendment in my State of the State address last Monday. I did talk about equal pay. And if that's what you're referring to, I will tell you that I absolutely support common sense legislation, because we have the biggest pay gap in the country right here in Louisiana, and it offends me. 69 cents on the dollar is the average we give a female when they have the same qualifications doing the same job as a male. And for women of color, it's as low as 50 cents. Again, the biggest gap in the country, and I believe we are needlessly trapping kids in poverty when we refuse to pay their mothers what they are worth for an hour's worth of work. And so if we would just address this, for example, by ending the ability for employers to insist that the employees not discuss their wages. Because if you end pay secrecy and employees get to compare and contrast their wages, this will be self-correcting. And so that's just a common sense approach to this. I hope the legislature will do it. But I did address equal pay, not the ERA.
Brock in Catahoula Parish. Thank you, Paula. Brock, you're on the air with Governor Edwards.
Hi, sir. I was just calling. I'm very curious about the current CBD situation in Louisiana, preferably the cannabis situation in general.
Brock, so thank you very much for the call. With respect to cannabis, we have taken steps over the last several years to legalize medicinal marijuana. We've created a framework by which that is to be implemented and regulated. It involves the Agriculture and Forestry Department with respect to overseeing the growing of it. It involves the pharmacy board with respect to prescribing, and it involves the Board of Medical Examiners as well. And of course, you may not know this, but LSU and Southern Universities, their ag centers, have the exclusive rights to grow, and they've each contracted out. We believe that the last big logjam has been removed, and at some point in the not too distant future, there will be product on shelves around the state of Louisiana. Now, with respect to recreational marijuana, which is I typically get at least one question on each of these radio programs, that is not something that I support, and I just can't go there. Now, if you're talking about hemp, there is legislation. There's several pieces of legislation because it was included in the Farm Bill that Congress passed last year, but it says states have to regulate it. We have a number of farmers across the state of Louisiana, big farmers who are interested in growing hemp for a variety of purposes, but they believe there's a significant market out there. And so the legislature is dealing with that right now, trying to figure out how to properly regulate hemp. And I'm not sure what the chances are that that's going to happen, but I would like to be able to see us regulate it properly and move forward.
Kim Hunter-Reid, you work very closely with Kathleen Blanco, and there is a report, I presume accurate, that she is receiving hospice care, although death is not considered imminent. She is fighting a, quote, terminal condition, and she remains quite a warrior.
Absolutely. All our prayers and best thoughts are with the governor and her family. I had a chance to visit with her on Sunday, and she's been a wonderful mentor to me. She's been a person who has had a heart for our people in Louisiana, as you know, a true champion for education. So it was wonderful to visit with her, to reminisce about some of our work and really talk about future policy work. As you know, UL Lafayette has a policy center that bears her name. So she was very interested in talking about a number of policy issues, and I'm grateful for the work that she has done in this state, leading the state. For the first time, as you know, Louisiana called on one of its daughters to lead Louisiana. And so she's a very special person and fighting hard for sure.
And Governor, I know you've gotten to know her very well.
I have, and by the way, I think they have an extraordinary family. So it's not just Kathleen, it's Coach, it's all of the children and grandchildren, and I think it's remarkable how much she loves this state and its people, especially the most vulnerable, the people who absolutely need a little help, and I think the commissioner had it exactly right. She has a heart for our state and for its people. She is a very strong, faithful lady, and you know, and I know that faith is just means the world to her and to the family right now. And I do encourage people to pray for her. People all over the state, pray for her and the family right now.
And one of her my favorite quotes from her is, "Education is poverty's mortal enemy." And I know that as we continue to advance good policy work, we have to think about how to move people out of poverty. So certainly good prayers for her.
Caleb in Ruston. Hi, Caleb. You're on You're on Ask the Governor with Kim Hunter-Reid and Governor John Bel Edwards. Hi, Caleb.
Hi. Yeah, I just wanted to ask mainly Dr. Kim. I'm a reporter here in Ruston, actually, and I heard you were here in Ruston yesterday, and I happened to be listening and figured I'd call and ask how that discussion with area superintendents went, and also whether that discussion of removing barriers for dual enrollment is related to the bill on the floor in the Senate to provide a framework for that.
Thank you for the call, Caleb. Yes, I was at Louisiana Tech on yesterday, met with about 15 superintendents and their dual enrollment coordinators. It was tied to the legislation that the governor has mentioned. The governor has asked if we're going to talk about universal access that we make sure that we can deliver on that and that we understand what's happening in rural communities and rural schools. So it was a great opportunity for me to hear from the superintendents about their support, first of all, for dual enrollment, but just to understand how are they handling all of the issues from financing it to transportation to who teaches it, who pays, how are parents informed. So the legislation that we are working on with Senator Marish as our author, with the governor's support and certainly John White's support and others as well, is trying to set up a statewide framework so that we have equal access, universal access for students, talking about a communications hub so there's good information for parents and students, that there's good information about who's offering dual enrollment and what kinds of courses you can access, whether it's career technical education or academic offerings. So I'm grateful for the hour plus that the superintendents gave to me on yesterday. We certainly look forward to engaging everyone about this issue and hearing directly from those on the ground.
Ann in Baton Rouge. Yes, Ann in Baton Rouge, you're on the air with Governor Edwards and Dr. Kim Hunter-Reid. Good afternoon, Ann.
Hello. Can you hear me?
Yes, ma'am.
Thanks. I'm an older worker. I'm 54, and I really have trouble finding a job here in Baton Rouge. I'm a very skilled worker. I'm not an engineer, architect, or accountant. But is there any plan, and this is for Dr. Hunter-Reid too, is there anything for older workers, especially older women? A lot of people tell me I'm probably facing age discrimination.
Well, I'm going to let the commissioner answer that, but Ann, 54 is not old.
Exactly.
I am 52 years old, but as it relates to the workplace, there may be some challenges there. I'll ask the commissioner to address those.
Sure. Thanks so much, Ann, for the question. Certainly, we are very focused on returning adults, upskilling and supporting returning adults, whether it's in our community and technical college system or in our University of Louisiana system or other colleges and universities. So first of all, I would encourage you, Ann, to let us know, what it is you are trying to do or interested in doing. We'd love to connect you to a training program and an opportunity to help you to do that. And certainly wanted to make sure that business and industry knows that you're available and eager to do good work. I agree with the governor. 54 is young, the new 20. And we look forward to supporting you and learning more about how we can help.
And Ann also, and if you'll give your name to Micah, I don't know whether you're still on the line, and if you give your name and number, we'll contact you back because there are jobs available out there right now, and so we can try to find an employer who's looking for someone with your skill set, with your experience, whatever educational achievements you've been able to have over the years or whatever, and see whether there's a job out there for you right now. If not, then the training. When I go to community technical colleges across the state of Louisiana, I see a lot of people in their 40s and 50s, and many of them have already worked 20 years somewhere.
That's right.
But this is going to actually accelerate. This is going to become the rule and not the exception going forward, where people are going to change jobs 6, 8, 10 times over a career, and the knowledge and the skills required for each job change. And so I see people who are Ann's age all the time, every single time I'm at a college campus or especially a community technical college campus.
Joe in New Orleans. Hello, Joe. You're on the air with Governor Edwards and Dr. Reid.
Hi, Governor. Thank you for your time, and thank you, Dr. Reid. My question has to do with a report that I read on NOLA.com this week that the governor would be supportive of House Bill 258 that would allow the state to shield their mechanism of executing people from public knowledge and scrutiny. It seems to conflict with your vote in 2014, and it doesn't bode well for the public.
Yeah, Joe, I think in response to a question, I said that I would be inclined to sign the bill were it to pass the legislature. And what it would do, I think it would exempt from the public record certain information. Now, I'll obviously reserve the right in this case and in all cases to see the bill in its final form once it arrives at my desk to make sure that it is, in fact, worthy of support. But on this issue, if the legislature sees fit to pass the bill, then I would be inclined to sign it, and that's the best answer I could give over the weekend when I was asked, and that's the best answer I can give today.
John in Erath. John, good afternoon. You're on with Governor Edwards.
Hello, Governor Edwards. How are you?
I'm doing fine. Thank you very much, John.
John LeBlanc, Erath.
Yes, sir.
Okay, what are your feelings on House Bill 542, the gas tax?
Okay. First of all, I'm really glad that you said that it was a transportation revenue bill because I don't ever know bill numbers. So I really appreciate you doing that. Look, 2 years ago, we actually had legislation pending in 2017. It was a fiscal session then. We had the benefit of a commission that had been created, a task force to study the problem with respect to the infrastructure backlog and the various means by which we could try to close the gap. And there were recommendations that came that included a gas tax increase. That bill did not get a vote in the House of Representatives, which is where all revenue bills have to originate. It came out of committee, went to the floor, and didn't get a vote. I don't know how a vote will happen this year on a similar bill that happens to be an election year, quite honestly. So, I don't think the prospects for the bill are good. I do think we need to continue to talk about the problem, however, because the gas tax is 16 cents. It's been 16 cents for 30 years. Inflation has whittled the purchasing power down to about 7.5 cents. And so it's just not possible to keep up, especially when you're trying to deliver the high capacity projects. And I think one of the things that we need to address pretty quickly is the fact that starting next year, we're not generating enough for the Transportation Trust Fund at the state level to provide the full non-federal match for our share of federal Transportation Trust Fund dollars. Now, the good news is we've got the problem resolved for next year because we have a surplus, and that's one of the allowable uses for a surplus. But it is something we're going to have to address. I just don't believe that it will be successful in this year. Based on my discussions with various legislators, both House and Senate.
We've got about 45 seconds, but since we last joined you, 4 high-paid administrators at LSU resigned their post after failing to comply with a state law requiring them to register their vehicles and get state driver's licenses. I seem to recall the sponsor of that measure.
Yeah, I passed that bill several years ago. Governor Jindal signed it. I believe in the bill. If you're going to take a high-paid job working for the state in Louisiana, you need to become a citizen of our state, and you ought not be driving a vehicle with plates on it from another state. I believe that it's not anything that's even remotely debatable for me, and it's unfortunate these individuals didn't comply with the law and have chosen, I think, in each case, to resign. Hopefully we'll find some more dedicated people to fill their places.
Thank you, Governor John Bel Edwards. Thank you, Dr. Kim Hunter-Reid, and thank you for listening. The governor will return on May 15th for the 38th installment of Ask the Governor. Until then, thanks for listening and stay tuned.